Labdien. I can't believe how lucky I'm feeling to be back in Latvia with you today to celebrate this conference. It's been many, many years and many, many trips since I first arrived in Latvia. I was thinking about that this morning, 1998. In November, Victoria Gentry and I came, following up on Penny Bede and Kathy Roller, who'd been there in September, as part of the Reading and Writing for Critical Thinking project, funded by George Soros, and funded in so many countries and for so many years with his projects around the world. Thank you, George. You started us on a journey of learning and companionship and friendship and discovery that has changed my life. And I'm hoping that it's also changed some of your lives. EDC, the Educational Development Group, picked up on that first RWCT project and followed. Now, as you well know, this is a result of what I think of as the strong women of Latvia. Irena, Aya, to name two that leap to mind. Sandra, our translator, who started standing between Victoria and I, taking us from place to place, and then became part of the leadership committee. The names go on, and I'm going to stop with just those because it would take my full 15 minutes if I kept talking about all of the educators that have made such a profound difference in your country. One of the things that Victoria and I always reflected on our trips back from your country was how impressed we were with the skill of your educators and with their ability to see beyond boundaries, to take risks, to make changes, to think forward in ways that were just stunning to us. And I think as when I got the email from Aya saying, would I consider speaking with you for a few minutes to start your conference today? I thought, here's another perfect example. This latest project, now looking at changing small schools and helping keep communities alive because of the work that is going on in these small schools and reinventing them to be something that unites community, that creates different partnerships, that looks toward the future, that protects the children, that nurtures the family and provides for people in ways that fit their context, that's separate from any other spot. So through the years I've been involved in social studies projects, in preschool projects, in bilingual projects as your country changed all through EDC, and now I'm looking at this latest small schools project and thinking, and yet here it comes again, a new economic crisis, a new need to change, and those Latvians rising to the fore and making a difference. Aya said, could you talk for a few minutes about looking at the 21st century learning and the things that make a difference? So when I'm thinking about that, what I think about my basic thinking about 21st century learning is it's growing out of the good stuff we're doing already. And it's trying to keep removing those boundaries and helping people believe in themselves and to look forward. Thinking about what changes might come and what kind of skills do we need to move into that time period. So the biggest change, of course, is technology and looking at the shift. So I was playing in my mind some sort of recent technology stories, because as soon as you start to focus on something, you know how it works, opportunities explode. So let me tell you a few stories about what I think about in terms of change of technology that couldn't possibly have happened even just a few years ago. Here's one. 2 weeks ago, I flew from Vancouver in Canada on the west coast where I live to the middle of our country to a city named Winnipeg. It's about 2,300 kilometers away from here. So that's the first thing I'd like you to think about, is just how far I've gone, because of course that would have been lapping Latvia several times. When I arrived, having been away from my cell phone for about 3 hours, I sat in the taxi, and of course I was playing away on my cell phone, texting, emailing, talking, and when I got out of the taxi, I guess I dropped it. some things don't change. 21st century or not, you can still lose things. Long story short, my phone did not get returned. I, of course, was quite panicked because I don't know about your phone, but my phone's linked to my entire life. So from the hotel, I called back home, and my daughter, who is younger and considerably wiser than I am in technology, said, "Mom, don't worry, I'll erase it for you." And she did. So whoever got my phone got a phone with nothing on it. Now that to me is pretty cool. That's a change in technology. Total change. Here's another change. I was reading yesterday a little news article about Hillary Clinton. I'm always impressed with the way Hillary Clinton changes lives. She was speaking to the American Pediatric Association, I believe, and her speech was about children under 2 and recent research that was indicating that children under 2 should have no screen time, no television, no iPads, no playing with phones. And so this Hillary and Bill and their foundation have created literacy kits that are going out to the pediatric doctors in the States. And these kits encourage them to encourage their parents to sing and talk and read and dance and tell stories with their children under 2, rather than letting them be near iPads and televisions. Now, some of you may be thinking, oh, I don't know that that would happen here. But you know, when I think about iPhones and our technology, I didn't yet have a cell phone when I was flying once into Latvia. And into Riga, actually, as the plane landed, everybody pulled out their phone and started talking on it. And I said to Victoria, I don't even own one. And all the Latvians are talking on their phones. I am so behind. Look at how things have changed. So I bet there's a lot of iPads out there too. The other piece I think about is, the technology just shifts us so much. It keeps reminding us that it's not about knowledge. It's about skill and how we use the skill. We can access any kind of information by pulling out our phones, by pulling out our computers, by pulling out our iPads and our notebooks, because just a little slight type in and out comes the information. We were watching a movie the other night on TV, and in the movie was Catherine Zeta-Jones, a pretty famous Welsh-born American actress. She's young, she's beautiful, she's quite admired in this part of the world. And as we were watching, one of us sitting on the couch said, "How old is she? She looks very young." So we did a slight pause on our movie, checked on the phone, and within less than a minute knew that she was 25 years younger than her husband, and they were born on exactly the same day. We all did a little, oh my gosh, who knew? There's our knowledge piece, and then we went back. Because the important piece about that was, who cared? You can get the bits, you can get the knowledge. That's the big change. So we look forward and we think, so what do we want our kids to know? And what do we want our schools to do as we move into the 21st century? Into a knowledge generation. So I think there's some relatively significant changes that are shifting, and I invite you to think about what this looks like in your practice and how, as you continue to think about this, they continue to change your practice in the weeks and months and years to come. The first change is, I think now we are remembering to focus more on the learner than on the teacher. There was a time when in the classrooms the teacher was the most important. And I think as a result of the brain research and neuroscientists and just the plethora of information that's out there, we're realizing that the really important piece is who are the kids we're teaching? What do they need to know? And so all of the work we do as teachers is to focus on them first and foremost, and to bring the curriculum to them. And we certainly saw that in the changes you made in your Changing Schools projects. The second piece I think is reinforced, and we've been doing this for a while, but we continue to remember it, is thinking about gradual release of responsibility. No matter what we're teaching, whether it's woodworking, whether it's dance, whether it's reading, whether it's math, we start by modeling the best of what we know, and then we do a side-by-side coaching in terms of a guided practice. And then we let kids practice on their own, and then we look for independent application, which means we need to keep stepping back and moving away from them. But not just saying to them, what do you want to learn, and leaving them be, starting with the piece that says, let's take your questions and the skills and processes that you need to answer those questions and work together to figure out how to do it. So model, guided practice, independent practice, then working on their own. I think we need to remember how important emotions and motivation are in learning. Too often in the past we focused on curriculum and getting stuff into children. And there's enormous research that suggests that if you are in a joyful environment, if you are relaxed, if you are engaged, if you are happy with what you are doing, your brain is secreting different neurochemicals that makes it easier for information and skills and processes to get into long-term memory. So we really need to be cognizant and careful of who it is we're working with, and making sure that we are working with them in a way that keeps them confident and curious and capable. Carol Dweck calls it a growth mindset for each and every student that we work with. For today and for tomorrow, we need to believe in them and help them believe in themselves, so that they don't think that things are impossible for them to participate with, but they rather look out and say, what are my possibilities? What could I do? Because I am capable of doing almost anything. I just need people around me to support me and to move forward. We don't want a fixed mindset where it's only as good as what you've always been able to do. We want that growth mindset that moves us forward. Another skill in moving forward is the skill of collaboration. Learning is social. We know we're better together than we are alone. And so we need to be working in our environments, not just with our students, teaching them the skills of collaboration, but really as a staff, as a community, as a partnership, to think about how are we stronger together, and what different skills do people bring to increase the strength of that partnership. Rather than being frightened by diversity and differences, we need to embrace the diversity and figure out what everybody knows that can contribute to the goals that we're working toward. I guess another one I think about is metacognition is sometimes one of the words that's used to describe some of this. One of the current words in North America is self-regulation, but helping our students learn to set goals, to recognize when they're learning, to recognize when they need help, to recognize what success looks like, to build criteria with them for what success looks like, and then help them monitor along the way as they move toward that piece. That's part of the independence, but it's also part of developing resilience. Too often we see kids who quit early, who don't stick with things as long as they might, because they don't have the strategies to keep going, to help them get past the bumps in the road. And I think that's a bit of a Latvian trait, being able to stick with it and get past the bumps in the road. But I really want to make sure that we keep that in the forefront of, and think about that as a 21st century learning piece too, because that is something that does indeed make a difference. I guess there's a shift in assessment that's not new. I know we've talked about this at different points in time. We used to spend a lot of time on summative assessment or assessment of learning. The research really indicates that the most important part of assessment is assessment for learning, particularly feedback. So when I look forward, again, to 21st century learning and what it looks like in our schools, in and out of our buildings, I'm thinking about that assessment loop. How do we get feedback from our students to help us guide our instruction the next day? And how do we really make sure that we're attending to that rather than just moving forward? How do we work side by side with students on an individual basis where we're helping them with the work that they're doing and asking them questions? What's working? What's not? And what's the plan for what's next? If I, when I'm teaching, keep those 3 questions in my mind at all times, then my eye stays on the learner and we set goals together, and that takes us learning forward. One, I guess, we probably need a little practice of that. Let me just give you a practice. So I'm picturing that you're sitting in one of the lecture theaters at the university or in one of your grand buildings, and since it's November, there may be a little snow on the ground, but certainly there won't be many leaves, and the river will be moving along, the parks will be gorgeous, there'll still be some flower sellers out with toques and hats and scarves on. People will be bustling back and forth up and down through the parks and going to work and coming back, and I can hear the sounds in the air. Young women will be wearing unbelievably high stiletto heels, walking on cobblestones, and I'll be thinking about how my ankles are a bit wobbly just in my flat shoes and wondering how on earth they do it. And just now I'm sitting in my home on a typical Vancouver day in the fall. It has been pouring buckets of rain. It is almost dusk. Our leaves are just starting to turn, so there's not much change in color as I look out the window. There's a river outside my house. It's moving quickly. There's actually log booms stored along my river, and I can see them from my window. And the tug comes by, picks them up, and takes them up to the mill once they've been sitting here for a while. It's quiet on my street. The street ends at the end of the block, so there's very little traffic. There's a train that comes by once a day. So my environment just now and your environment have some similarities, but also some differences. I am very content sitting in my environment just now, though I am missing being with you. But I'm also thinking about how it's going to change. And winter will come, and we'll have our seasons go through, and spring will come, and all those pieces will keep moving by, and I'll still have the opportunity to sit by my window and watch things as they pass by. Now, I've attempted to create a tiny little picture for me and for you. For me to take me to where you are, for you to take you to where I am. And what I'd like you to think about for just a moment, and maybe like a 20-second private thing for this, is just rehearse back in your mind. What did you see? What did you see? Did you get some pictures in your mind? What did you hear? Are there words and language and details of the description that are still ringing in your ears from what I said? Did you have any emotional connection to anything that I was talking about? Did you have any questions? Did your mind start to wander in any kind of direction? Did it cause connections? Were you starting to read and listen between the lines? Pause for just a moment, and then I'd like you to, and this is a bit tricky when it's by video, but I know that all those amazing women will be up there organizing you. Turn to somebody who's sitting close to you. Tell them what you were thinking about, and hear what they were thinking about. You've only got about a minute, so talk quickly. Okay, so my question to you is, when you talked to your neighbor, did you get surprised by something? Did they think differently than you did? Has your thinking expanded by their perspective? Are you now smarter than when you were by yourself and you were smart to begin with? Do you have a new goal about what you'd listen for if I was repeating that story? Can you picture how you could use something as simple as that with the students that you're seeing tomorrow, with people that you're working with in your office, with partners that you are meeting in the business community? Because this is the essence of what we're doing when we think about 21st century learning. Enabling students and teachers and all our partner groups to think differently within their contexts, to be proud of themselves and where they are, to set goals, to know that these goals are attainable if they continue to work together in situations that they think of themselves as problem identifiers in, and then problem solvers if they're not defeated by outside politics and everything that swirls around, adding complexity to our lives. And if they continue to have that buoyant, resilient, happy, all-encompassing, bright-eyed Latvian look. Paul Diaz for inviting me to join you today. I can hardly wait to join you again in person sometime. Take these few ideas, try them with your students, and then tell somebody else how your thinking has changed. Multiple perspectives make a greater difference for us all. Again, Paul Diaz.